gonna let you go. You was fine, never mind, unpredictable. Vida off the ground, you ain't no one. You a star, blow it up like supernova. In the nighttime, hit my hotline. Sharing secrets, you wish really was part your life. Bad habits, little rabbit. Now sit down, you can have it. I see it when you walk my way.
Welcome back to What's the Obsession, where we deep dive into a number of true crime cases. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. Please hit like and subscribe and the bell for future notifications. Gabriella Vergas is one of the genetic genealogists who testified in the State versus Bryank Kohberger preliminary trial hearing just recently. Her testimony was controversial as she disclosed that law enforcement sometimes has a roundabout, backhanded way of finding the suspects when they use a genetic genealogy investigative method to find suspects for a crime. Later that evening, the same evening that she testified in the Bryank Kohberger pretrial hearing, she was visited by two FBI agents at her home and her residence. I'll speak for myself. When I first learned about this, I thought witness intimidation. I was thinking, why in the heck is the FBI going to visit this woman after she struggled her to give this testimony in a trial of 4 homicides where the death penalty is on the table? Why the heck would they visit her? They must be trying to quiet her. She went too far. However, after doing some research into Gabriella Vergas's history, her past, and her professional experience, I'm wondering if we should be looking at the visit from the FBI agents to her residence in a different light. I'm going to explain in this video. Here, Ms. Vargas is talking about a process that a consumer might go through when they are signing up for one of the DNA kits and they are electing to send their sample to GEDmatch.
For over 30 years, you've connected to your family history with Ancestry. Our expansive record collections and growing network of family trees have helped our members make billions of meaningful connections.
When you input that file, it's going to ask you, do you consent to law enforcement matching?
When you indicate whether you consent to law enforcement matching or law enforcement database, yes or no, that is a binding legal contract.
And if you hit no, I should not be able to see that you are a match to my unknown DNA contributor.
You said should not.
Should not.
Does it happen anyway?
And this is the moment when the testimony got really tense, or I should say Gabriella Vergas got really tense. My initial read of the situation was that Ms. Vargas was nervous because she knew she was about to disclose some secrets. She was about to disclose the fact that law enforcement uses what she called loopholes, allows them free access to the genetic profiles of people, of citizens who have specifically opted out of taking part in the law enforcement database. But after doing some research into Gabriella Vergas's history and her professional accomplishments,
Gabriella Vergas is a genetic genealogist, probably one of the best in the country, if not the world.
It crossed my mind that I need to consider that her nerves here were because she knew she was going to talk about something that she had done on her own or in cooperation with law enforcement that the public shouldn't know about because we might not like it because it violates our social agreement, our laws.
You said should not.
Should not.
Does it happen anyway?
It does. It has.
And is that because there's a problem with GEDmatch? It's just a fluke, you upload it and all of a sudden these things that shouldn't happen did?
There was There are a lot of tools that are available in GEDmatch.
And before going back to what Gabriella Vergas said in her testimony, let's take a look at the GEDmatch website, the part of it that explains your privacy or opt-in choices. On the website, it says explicitly and currently, GEDmatch does not store raw DNA files on the site. In today's digital age, your privacy and security are paramount. Here at GEDmatch, we have taken several steps to protect user privacy and data security, including offering the option to opt out of law enforcement searches. When you upload your data, the information is encoded and the raw file deleted. By taking key precautions like this, we protect our users' most sensitive information. Beneath that, there are explanations of the choices that you can elect. Public opt-in. We will compare your DNA kit to all other kits in the GEDmatch database to find your matching genetic relatives. Kits in this database include those submitted by users undertaking personal genetic genealogy research, adoptee searches, users, including law enforcement, attempting to identify unidentified human remains, and law enforcement attempting to identify perpetrators of violent crimes. Your kit will be compared with kits submitted by law enforcement to identify perpetrators of violent crimes. The operators of GEDmatch encourage everybody to select this option. So that, my friends, is what you get when you check the public opt-in box. GEDmatch claims that the consumer has choices, so next there is the public opt-out choice. Public opt-out option is essentially just like the public opt-in option, except for this statement right here. It will not be compared with kits submitted by law enforcement to identify perpetrators of violent crimes. And last, there's an option for research. This kit will not be shown in match result reports generated for other kits. Genealogy and genetic genealogy require sharing of information. This option is provided primarily for artificially created research kits, but may be used for regular uploads if you have a specific reason for doing so. And I also wonder what that's all about. Let's return back to the question of why 2 FBI agents visited the home of Gabriella Vergas just hours after her testimony for the defense of Bryank Kohberger in the recent pre-trial hearing. In my opinion, Bryank Kohberger's defense team is a master at capturing public opinion and shaping it the way that they want it to be shaped. I think it was very convenient for the defense to pick up on this story of, oh my gosh, 2 FBI agents visited Vargas's house right after she testified and make it sound as though it was witness tampering or something close to it, and it could have been that. But when you start to learn about Gabriella Vergas's story and her work history, which is very honorable, by the way, I think other questions do come up. When I learned about her history in investigative genetic genealogy, and particularly this story that you're about to hear, a cold case that Gabriella Vergas solved of a young woman. The case had been cold for 34 years, and Gabriella Vergas solved it in 4 days. And looking at a number of cases where investigative genetic genealogy was used to match the suspect's unknown DNA profile with a relative, this oftentimes took weeks, months, and even into a time span of, we're talking years. It's certainly possible, from what I understand, that these matches could be made in a matter of days, but that would definitely be very uncommon. So was it the case that when Gabriella Vergas gave law enforcement the tip that caused them to crack this 34-year cold case, did Gabriella use those loopholes that she mentioned in her testimony, or did she and law enforcement use them together, or did law enforcement pressure her to use these loopholes? Based on logic and some of the internet banter that I have been tuning into, it is currently my theory that when Gabriella Vergas was so emotional on the stand, she certainly may have been emotional because she feels uncomfortable about what law enforcement is doing in the realm of genetic genealogy in general, but I, at this point, believe that she was also emotional and nervous because she knows that this case that you're about to learn about was an example of law enforcement and maybe along with Gabriella Vergas using investigative genetic genealogy the wrong way, the way that violates the rights of the consumers, of citizens, in its unregulated field. Let me know what you think about this. Here's a little bit that you should know about Gabriella Vergas.
I'm a pink-haired, tattooed mom from California who enjoys woodworking and gardening.
Gabriella Vergas is a genetic genealogist, probably one of the best in the country, if not the world.
Ms. Vargas talked about a case that she solved that had been cold for over 30 years. This case sought to solve the murder of a young woman named Roxanne Wood, and Gabriella used investigative genetic genealogy to solve that 30-year-old cold case.
On February 20, 1987, 30-year-old Roxanne Wood was found stabbed to death in her Niles home. The case would go unsolved for 34 years. That is until Vargas got involved.
It was deemed unsolvable prior to my involvement. And I said, well, why don't you let me look at it?
At this point in the case, no other investigative genetic genealogist had taken a look at the case.
I concluded that I did not stand with the others. I believed that this case was extremely solvable, and I believed that I could solve it.
She is asked to describe the size of the DNA sample she had to work with.
It was 28 picograms, so small that you could never see it with the naked eye.
So Gabriella got to work, and incredibly, she was able to generate a genetic profile from this speck of DNA. Ms. Vargas tells us what can be learned about a person when she has a little bit of their DNA, and she begins to build out a profile to investigate that DNA sample.
It tells me where their ancestral origins come from. Are they Eastern European? Are they Mediterranean? Are they African Americans? But all that profile tells us is all of their genetic markers. It tells us if they're male, if they're female, what ethnicity they are. It doesn't say this is who your person is.
In this cold case investigation Gabriella Vergas was working, she found that the person was Caucasian, the person in question. Gabriella then turned to an online DNA service called GEDmatch. When consumers use DNA sites like 23andme.com and Ancestry.com, they can take the results and upload them to this broader database with the hopes of finding more relatives.
They can choose to opt into law enforcement matching. If they do that, I can see if they are a match to my suspect.
Gabriella was able to use GEDmatch and the genetic profile she developed to build the family tree of Roxanne's killer. Ms. Vargas explains how far back in time she had to go while she was conducting this investigation.
One side of the tree, the ancestor was 1823. On the other side, the top ancestor was 1797. And it led me to a union couple.
A union couple is where two sides of the family tree meet. Gabriella goes on to explain what you're really looking at when you're looking at these matches is finding the place where they connect to each other. And then you know you're starting to get somewhere.
This couple was born around 1920. Based on that, we can presume that they would have kids around 1940, maybe 1950. It would have to be one of their children
that the DNA sample was taken from, the DNA sample from the person believed to be the killer of Roxanne Wood, a cold case for over 30 years. It was found that that union couple had 3 sons, and by doing some investigation and background checks, investigators were able to eliminate 2 of the 3 sons, leaving them with just 1 suspect based on Gabriella's work. When investigators took a look into that one subject's history, they found out that he had been involved in a lot of things, a lot of different crimes and sexually deviant crimes.
It came down to 3 brothers, but ultimately
February of
there was only
2022,
one she believed fit the
Gilmore
crime.
was
67-year-old Patrick Gillum.
Patrick was in the area. He was a career criminal. He had very similar crimes in his rap sheet, and he was the individual that I felt was, in fact, our subject.
So, when you connect the suspect's DNA with a suspect who has a history of violent crimes, particularly violent crimes that go along with the MO of this particular crime, you've got yourself a really good lead.
Roxanne Wood's family was my motivation for working as hard and as fast as I did. They never gave up hope that one day justice would be served. They have a Facebook page. Janet Wood had made a post on the page, "One day, Rock, one day." And I screamed out at the top of my lungs, "No, today's your day, Rock. Today's your day."
In February of 2022, justice was finally found for Roxanne Wood, and the suspect that Gabriella helped to find
Sentenced to a minimum of 23 years in prison after pleading no contest for second-degree murder. And although 34 years of investigating took Vargas
4 days.
to solve, she says it was about getting justice for Roxanne Wood.
For me, this was about bringing closure to the family and justice to Roxanne. But this is why I do this. I do this to bring closure to these families.
And in that same spirit, What's the Obsession would like to remember the victims of this horrible tragedy. Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves. May we find justice for them and peace for their families. Thank you so much for watching.